Hey, David Russo here with another episode of Breaking Chords, and this is Open Voiced Arpeggios. And I know I've been very interested in open voiced arpeggios and chords for a long time. And this is something you can hear coming from players like Eric Johnson and Steve Morse. And I'm a huge fan of both of those guitarists. There's a lot of other players too, John Petrucci. There's a lot of a lot of players out there that do this. But I'm a huge Steve Morse fan, and I also love Eric Johnson and John Petrucci too. So, the concept and the idea is kind of different. And if this is something new for you, this might unlock and open, a brand new door for you. So, anyway, here we go. Open voiced arpeggios and chords have popped up in episodes of Chord Play. And I've talked about this, briefly, but we're going to attack this, kind of head on in this episode. So the first thing you need to understand is what open voiced means. You have closed voice and you have open voiced, and this is true for chords and also arpeggios, since arpeggios basically come from chords. So I guess the best way to kind of think of this or look at it is just think of a closed voiced chord or arpeggio first. And that basically just means the notes or the triad of the chord is within the same octave. It's limited to one octave. And you can actually find one, if you just think of a major bar chord, you can see there's C, E, and G right here. A little three-note cluster, and that remains within the same octave. Now, open voiced is where we take those three notes, and instead of limiting them to one octave, we spread them out beyond an octave. And there's a lot of different ways you can find this on the guitar. So instead of doing, C, E, and G, all stacked up like that, what if we take that three-note triad and spread the notes out? So let's try it like this. This is a very frequent and common open-voiced, fingering, where we have C, G, which is the fifth, and then we're putting that third E up on the top, in a higher octave. Same three notes, but just arranged and spelled a little bit differently. So that would basically be, a C major open voiced chord or arpeggio. You could strum it, or you could also pick through it. Now we can find that spelling also hiding right here. The exact same thing, but now we're on the low E string, A and G. And that's grabbing the C, G, and E notes that we just played here. Now we can expand that again and have a D string root, and we can find that right here. There's C, G, and E. So there's three different flavors or variations of that C major arpeggio or chord. Okay, the next step here is we're going to harmonize, a C major scale. So we haven't really talked about this in chord play or really any the material I've put together so far. I kind of assume that, a few of you watching this probably knew what that is. And if this is something new for you, then really what we're going to do is take a C major scale, and without leaving the key of C major, we're going to build chords on every note in that scale. And if we do that, we're going to have an arrangement that looks like this. And these are all open voiced, chords or arpeggios. So we've got C major, which we already uncovered. The second chord there would be D minor. And there's kind of a D minor fingering, for that open voiced arpeggio. Now take that, move it up a whole step, and there's E minor. And that's going to function as the three chord. Go up a half step and go back to that C major shape that we had here at the start. And we'll have F major right there, the four chord. Go up a whole step, there's G major, the five chord. Go up a whole step and go back to that minor fingering, and we have A minor, which is the sixth chord. Go up a whole step and modify the shape ever so slightly. We're going to lower the fifth. So instead of F sharp, play F natural, and that would be a B diminished right there. And then you go up a half step and return to the shape we started with, and you're back at C major again, an octave higher. So we just unlocked, C major harmonized on the fretboard. C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, diminished, and C major again. All right, now we can keep those little, open voiced arpeggio shapes, and then we can also just kind of make a melodic phrase out of it like this. And really all I did right there is, I kept the C major open voiced arpeggio, and then I grabbed C and slid to D. So it's technically the ninth, if we're still thinking of C, but it's also giving you a sneak peek of what the next chord or arpeggio is, which is D minor. And then do the same thing in D minor. And we're sliding that D up to E. Now play E minor. And just slide up a half step to F, because the next chord is going to be F. There's G. There's A. And then we've got B diminished. So we can kind of create this little melodic line. And we can ascend or descend, using that pattern and that idea. And I really like those kind of, licks and phrases, and you can hear a lot of guitarists, playing ideas like that. We're just kind of picking through, the notes of that arpeggio and then sliding, kind of hinting at the next chord in the sequence. And there's a lot of cool things you can do like that. Okay, let's expand this idea now. So, earlier in the lesson, I uncovered that shape. I also uncovered this one, and also this higher shape with a D string root. But let's stay in the same position, and we're just going to borrow this, C major voicing we found here. But let's, shift that to G. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing, but on a different series of strings and in a different key. So now we're going to harmonize G major. So now there's G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, and then F sharp diminished, and then G major again. If you want to, you can take that same melodic sequence we used in C and then apply that to the key of G and just experiment to see, what you come up with. And there's a lot of things you can do like that with this idea. We're kind of separating those notes and spreading them out, and it creates, a wider, more interesting arpeggio. Okay, now let's target the other shape that we uncovered near the beginning of the video. So we had this, we found that, and we also found, an open voiced arpeggio with a D string root. So let's borrow this shape now and see what happens. And if we move it back to where we started, around the third position, we're kind of making this like the base of operations, for this lesson. But if we start there, that's going to be F major, because we've got the notes F, C, and A right there. And that sounds way more interesting and different compared to just, that little stock triad with a closed voice. Right? It opens up the sound of that chord and arpeggio. So there's, F major. So if we kind of map that out in the key of F, we'd have F major, G minor, A minor, B flat major, C major, D minor, E diminished, and then we'll be back at F again. Let's borrow that melodic sequence we used with C and G and apply it to F. And I'm also going to ascend this time instead of descending. You can do it ascending or descending. I'm just attempting to mix it up a little bit by climbing up instead of, kind of scooting down or moving down. So we'll start with F, and then G minor, and then A minor, B flat major, C major. there's D minor, E diminished, and then we're back at F again. And it's a really good, fingering exercise. It's a good picking exercise because we've got some string skipping going on in there. And it maps out, the fretboard in kind of a different and unique way. We're looking at, arpeggios, which could also be viewed as chords. And there's a ton of things you can do with this concept and kind of revealing, some of those fingerings and shapes around the fretboard. All right, that's going to wrap this kind of basic look at open-voiced arpeggios, which you can also think as chords. And we can definitely move this, avenue in this area of thought into, more advanced ideas. You can skip around, you can create, more melodic ideas, you can slide more, you could bend in and out of notes, you could add, some more notes. But the important thing here is you're learning the concept of moving around the fretboard and connecting these arpeggios. Let me know if you got anything from this, and I wish you luck, kind of tapping into open-voiced arpeggios and harmonized major scales, because we're going to talk about this, more in the future. And I definitely will, kind of bring some of these ideas over to chord play and some other, some of the other lessons and content here. So leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it. Thank you.